They said he looked normal, polite, soft-spoken, the kind of man who'd help you carry groceries. But behind that quiet voice was something darker, something waiting to be fed. Before we begin, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories that explore what happens when the human mind turns dark. It's 1978. Bath, Ohio. A boy named Jeffrey Dahmer walks through his neighborhood, pale and silent, hands buried in his pockets. His classmates barely notice him. Teachers describe him as odd but harmless. But even then, something inside him was beginning to stir, a fascination not with people, but with what remained after life left them. At home, his father teaches him how to clean animal bones, a father-son science lesson meant to inspire curiosity. But for Jeffrey, it sparks something else. A question that won't leave his mind: what happens to the soul when the body is gone? He collects roadkill, dissects small creatures, and listens to the hollow echo of emptiness. "I just wanted to see how they fit together," he once said. That curiosity, quiet, innocent, would one day turn into horror. And by then, no one would be able to look away. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee in 1960, a blonde-haired boy with a shy smile and restless eyes. His early photos show a child who seemed gentle, even tender. But his home was filled with tension. His parents fought often, their voices sharp, their silences sharper. When they divorced, the quiet in Jeffrey's life grew unbearable. He wasn't violent as a child. He was lonely. Deeply, achingly lonely. While other kids played baseball, he walked the woods behind his house, searching for animals that had died on the road. He'd take them home, study their remains, and whisper, "I just want to understand." Neighbors thought it was strange, but his father, a chemist, mistook it for curiosity. He showed him how to preserve bones using acid. That simple act, meant as a bonding moment, became the seed of Jeffrey's obsession. In school, Jeffrey was invisible. By high school, he started drinking, even in class. The alcohol made him feel less human, less anxious. It made the emptiness stop, he later confessed. But emptiness doesn't vanish, it just hides. And soon, Jeffrey's silence would become something darker, a silence that swallowed others whole. It started small, a fixation hidden behind polite smiles. Jeffrey was now a teenager, alone in his parents' large, quiet house after their divorce. The walls echoed. The silence became a companion. And somewhere in that silence, his thoughts began to twist. He started imagining what it would be like if people never left. If they could stay, motionless, silent, in his. He didn't want pain, not yet. He wanted permanence. A way to stop time. One night, as thunder rolled through Ohio, he brought home the body of a dead animal. He laid it out carefully, dissecting, studying, breathing in the stillness. It was like, they were finally mine, he later admitted. By graduation, his drinking worsened. Teachers ignored the slurred words, the empty gaze. No one asked what he was running from. When a jogger passed by his window every morning, Jeffrey's thoughts turned darker. He later said, "I thought about bringing him inside, but I didn't." That line, "but I didn't," would not last forever. The storm inside him was growing stronger. And soon, curiosity would turn into action. The year was 1978, just weeks after Jeffrey Dahmer's high school graduation. His mother had moved away, his father was gone, and the house stood empty. No supervision. No sound. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of his thoughts. That summer, he picked up a young hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They talked, drank beer, and laughed in that lonely house. For once, Jeffrey felt connected, seen. But when Stephen said he had to leave, something inside Jeffrey snapped. "I couldn't let him go," he later confessed. "I didn't want him to leave." The line between wanting company and needing control vanished. What happened next was quiet, deliberate, an act that sealed his fate forever. Jeffrey later said it wasn't rage or hatred that drove him. It was fear. Fear of being left alone again. He buried what was left in the woods, then dug it up weeks later, unable to let go. When police found nothing, life went on. Jeffrey even enrolled in college, tried to join the army, tried to be normal. But inside, the silence had already taken root. And from that silence, hunger began to grow again. For a while, Jeffrey Dahmer looked like any other man trying to rebuild his life. He moved into an apartment, worked at a chocolate factory, and kept mostly to himself. To his co-workers, he was quiet but polite, the kind of man who never caused trouble. He blended in perfectly. He learned how to wear the mask. A calm smile. A soft voice. A rhythm that fooled everyone. "I've got to keep it together," he once told himself, staring at his reflection. "If they see the real me, it's over." Neighbors would later recall the faint smell from his apartment, a strange mix of chemicals in decay. When they complained, Jeffrey apologized softly, blaming it on spoiled meat. He even offered them sandwiches sometimes, gestures so ordinary, they erased suspicion. At night, though, the mask came off. He sat alone under the dim kitchen light, staring into the freezer, replaying his rituals like prayers. He said it gave him peace, a way to stop people from leaving. On the surface, he was the quiet man next door. Behind the door, he was feeding his demons, one secret at a time. By the early 1990s, the mask began to crack. The smell in Jeffrey Dahmer's Milwaukee apartment grew impossible to ignore. Neighbors complained again and again. A woman down the hall, Glenda Cleveland, called the police more than once, telling them something wasn't right, the smell, the noise, the strange young men coming and never leaving. But Dahmer always had a calm answer. He smiled, apologized, even joked. "Just bad meat," he said softly. His politeness disarmed suspicion. He looked too ordinary to be dangerous. One night, a frightened young man escaped from his apartment, handcuffed, half-dressed, trembling. The police found him. Dahmer approached calmly, explained that it was just a lover's quarrel. They believed him. They handed the boy back. Hours later, that boy was dead. The next time the police arrived, the scene was different. A man named Tracy Edwards had managed to flee and lead them back to apartment 213. Inside, officers opened the refrigerator and froze. Photographs, bones, and horrors beyond comprehension filled the small space. And in that still apartment, Dahmer stood quietly, hands behind his back, whispering one line. "For what I did. I should be dead." July 22, 1991, the night Jeffrey Dahmer's double life finally collapsed. Police officers, still trembling from what they'd seen in apartment 213, let him out in handcuffs. Outside, the city lights glared, the air heavy with disbelief. Reporters shouted his name. Neighbors peeked from windows, realizing the quiet man next door wasn't just strange, he was something unimaginable. Inside the police station, Dahmer was calm. Almost relieved. He spoke softly, answering every question. No lies. No resistance. "It's over now," he said. "I'm glad it's over." Detectives listened in stunned silence as he confessed to everything, every ritual, every victim, every detail he remembered. He told them where he kept the photos, how he arranged the remains, and how he wished he could stop but couldn't. There was no rage in his voice, only fatigue, as if he'd been carrying the weight of his own darkness for too long. When asked why he did it, Dahmer simply said, "I wanted them to stay. That's all." The world would never forget those words. Because in them was the perfect horror, the kind that doesn't scream, it whispers. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer was unlike anything America had seen. The courtroom was packed, survivors, families, reporters, all trying to make sense of a man who looked more like a tired clerk than a killer. Dressed neatly, speaking softly, Dahmer didn't plead insanity. He said he was guilty, but wanted to understand why. Psychologists called him a paradox, a man capable of deep reflection and unimaginable cruelty. They spoke of control, loneliness, and obsession. Dahmer sat quietly, eyes fixed on the floor, as the families of his victims wept, screamed, cursed his name. He never argued. He never cried. He only said, I know I deserve whatever I get." When the sentence came, 15 life terms, nearly 1,000 years, Dahmer nodded once. "Thank you," he whispered to the judge. In prison, he found routine again: cleaning, reading the Bible, staying quiet. Some said he sought redemption. Others said he was just hiding behind another mask. He began attending chapel, telling inmates he'd found faith. But even faith couldn't silence the ghosts that visited him at night. Because some prayers are too late to be answered. Inside the walls of Columbia Correctional Institution, Jeffrey Dahmer lived with the one thing he had always feared most: himself. The noise of prison life faded behind him, replaced by long hours of reflection, reading, and the quiet hum of guilt. He told prison psychologists, "I wasn't born evil. I just stopped feeling." He described his crimes not with pride, but with eerie detachment, as if watching someone else's story unfold. His words were clinical, but his eyes told a different story: a man haunted by the silence he created. When asked what drove him, he said it wasn't hate, or thrill, or even power. It was the fear of abandonment, a craving for control so twisted that it turned love into destruction. "I wanted them to stay," he said again. "Even if it meant, like that." In his final months, Dahmer spoke often about God, forgiveness, and the emptiness he could never fill. Yet even his calm voice couldn't wash away the truth that his humanity and monstrosity had always lived side by side. He understood himself too late. And by then, redemption was just another word he couldn't feel. On November 28, 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death by a fellow inmate in a prison bathroom. No cameras. No witnesses. Just the echo of metal on tile and the sound of justice, or vengeance, depending on who you asked. When news of his death broke, the world exhaled. Some felt relief, others sorrow for what he might have become if someone had seen the warning signs earlier. The victims' families called it closure. But for many, there was no closure, only a reminder of how darkness can wear an ordinary face. Years later, psychologists still study him. His story forces an uncomfortable question: what happens when loneliness, neglect, and silence twist the human need for connection into something unrecognizable? Dahmer's life is less about monsters and more about the terrifying possibility that monsters are made, not born. He wasn't a beast from birth. He was a man who lost his reflection and started collecting others instead. If this story made you think, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more true crime stories that reveal the minds behind the madness. Because sometimes, the quietest people hide the loudest horrors.